Sometimes it feels like the natural world is running on some kind of secret code, right? Well, it is. And today, we're going to crack one of its biggest secrets. Think of it like a universal energy tax that shapes, well, pretty much everything. Who eats whom, and why the whole planet is structured the way it is.
Okay, so it all starts with a super simple question, one you've probably thought about before. Why is it that you see tons and tons of plants, a decent number of rabbits hopping around, but you almost never see a fox? It's like the numbers just shrink the higher you go up the food chain. And let me tell you, that is absolutely not a coincidence. It's actually one of the most basic rules of the game for life on Earth. So, to solve this little mystery, you gotta stop thinking about animal populations and start thinking about currency. Seriously, the most important currency in any ecosystem is energy. So if we want to understand this whole pyramid of life, we've got to follow the money, or, the energy. And here's the kicker. It's a one-way street. No turning back.
Yeah, it's a really simple, straight line. The energy goes from the sun to the plants, then from the plants to the things that eat them, like a rabbit, and then from the rabbit to the things that eat it, like a fox. It never, and I mean never, goes the other way. This simple fact means that literally everything in nature is built from the bottom up. It all relies on that first bit of energy captured by the plants.
All right, this is where we get to the real core of it. We know the energy flows up, but where does it all go? It can't all make it to the top, right? The answer is this really simple but honestly mind-blowing idea called the 10% rule.
Now, the fancy science term for this is ecological efficiency. But really, you can just think of it like a report card. It's grading how well energy gets passed from one level to the next. How much of that grass the rabbit ate actually becomes more rabbit. That's the question we're asking.
And here it is, the big reveal. On average, only about 10%, just 10% of the energy that an organism eats actually gets stored and passed on. Stop and think about that for a second. That means for every single meal, a whopping 90% of the energy is just gone. It disappears from the food chain completely.
Okay, let's make this super clear with some easy numbers. Let's say a bunch of plants have 100 calories of energy locked up inside them. A rabbit comes along and eats those plants. Out of those 100 calories, it only gets to keep about 10. Then a fox comes and eats the rabbit, and guess what? The fox only gets one single calorie from that entire chain. That's nature's energy tax for you, and it is brutal.
Now, we call it the 10% rule, but I should say it's really more of a rule of thumb. It's not a hard and fast law. In the real world, some ecosystems might be a little more efficient. Maybe they get up to 35%. Others might be way less efficient, down around 5%. But that 10% figure, it's a fantastic average that really helps you get a handle on how this all works. And get this, before we even start talking about that 10% transfer between animals, the inefficiency is actually way, way worse at the very beginning. Think about it. The plants themselves, they only manage to capture about 1% of the sun's energy that shines down on them. So the massive energy leak starts right at the source.
Okay, so this obviously raises a huge question, right? If only 10% of the energy makes it to the next step, where the heck does the other 90% go? It can't just vanish into thin air. So let's play detective and figure it out.
Turns out that missing 90% goes to two main places. First up is just the cost of living. Think about that rabbit. It's burning up most of its energy just being a rabbit, hopping around, breathing, keeping its body warm. None of that energy can be passed on to the fox. And second, there's a fundamental law of physics you just can't escape. Every time energy is converted from one form to another, like from plant to rabbit, some of it has always lost as heat. It's like a universal service fee that can't be avoided.
So this massive, constant loss of energy, it isn't just some neat little piece of trivia. It has huge, profound consequences. It's the reason why ecosystems have that classic pyramid shape, and it's also the reason why food chains are almost always really, really short. Yeah, the biggest and most obvious result of this is that food chains just can't be very long. When you're paying a 90% energy tax at every single step, your budget just runs out super fast. It's why you almost always see just 4, maybe 5 levels in a food chain. By the time you even think about a 6th level, there's just no energy left. The bank is empty. You can't support a whole population on those scraps.
And this whole structure is what scientists call a pyramid of energy. Just look at the numbers here. To get just 1 calorie of energy to that top predator, you need 1,000 calories way down at the bottom with the plants. This pyramid shape is the perfect picture of that massive energy squeeze happening at every step.
And here's the thing about this pyramid, the one rule that can never, ever be broken. It can't be inverted. It can't be upside down. Because you are always losing energy as you go up, there's no way you can have a tiny base supporting a massive top. It's physically impossible.
Okay, so we've got it down. Energy gets lost as it goes up the food chain. That's the rule. But this leads to a really interesting and kind of scary question. What happens when something gets into the food chain that doesn't disappear? What if it sticks around?
Right. This is where we see the dark side of the 10% rule, a totally unexpected twist. It creates something called biomagnification, and it literally flips our whole energy pyramid completely upside down.
So what is biomagnification? Well, it's what happens with certain things, usually nasty, long-lasting toxins, that build up in body fat. See, unlike energy, these things don't get burned off for fuel or lost as heat. Nope. They get stored in an animal's tissues, and they just stay there.
And the result is this. A pyramid that is completely upside down. You start with just one tiny unit of a toxin down in the algae, but then it gets magnified every single time. The zooplankton eats a bunch of algae, the little fish eats a bunch of zooplankton, and the top predator eats a ton of those little fish. And by the time you get to the top, that one unit of toxin has exploded into 1,000,000 units. It's insane.
And here's the wild paradox of it all. The exact same rule that makes energy disappear is what makes these toxins become super concentrated. All that poison from thousands of tiny organisms at the bottom gets collected and crammed into the body of the one predator at the top. The less there is of you, the more concentrated the poison becomes.
And that brings this whole thing right back home to us. The 10% rule isn't just some abstract thing about lions on the savannah. It's the reason that toxins like mercury build up so heavily in top predators. Predators like tuna, swordfish, and yeah, even us. It leaves us with a pretty serious question to chew on, doesn't it? Knowing how this works, what might be concentrating on your dinner plate?